Hi, welcome to Phoenix Unleashed, episode 1. I'm your host, Shipra Hendry, and wow, we are in some pretty interesting times. So, I want to explain a little bit about why the name Phoenix, why the Phoenix. The Phoenix is actually not just a mythical creature. I've never seen one. I don't think any of us have ever seen one, but the Phoenix is actually talked about in the Torah. It is the only, and this is crucially important, it is the only creature that was created and put in the Garden of Eden that did not eat from the Eitz Hadas, from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the only animal, which means that the phoenix, because it didn't eat from the Eitz Hadas, is not subject to death. It's eternal. Now, it doesn't have, and this is all so interesting because all of this applies to our own process now. In these times, we need to understand the metaphors of the Torah. We need to understand the path forward. We need to understand how to internalize these mystical concepts, really, really take them on the road, use them to transform our own consciousness, our emotions, our actions, our way of being, so that we can be players in this vast unfolding, in this rebirth of the world. Okay, so more about the phoenix. In Hebrew, the phoenix is called chol. I don't think there's a whole lot written about it, but again, the most important thing to know is that it did not eat from the tree of knowledge, the Eitz Hadas, Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. When Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, death was brought to the world. The toxicity of the snake, that inner voice, that's how we experience a lot of it. The guilt, the shame, the fear, the rage, the isolation, all of those things, the blaming came into the human psyche and became part of the human psyche. As we go through life, as we go through from one generation to the next generation, each person reacquires through their upbringing and then the circumstances that happen to them in life reacquires a very personal relationship with all of these Eitz Hadas, these tree of knowledge emotions. These are the traumas that we accumulate that literally create an energy that blocks the flow of our soul. I used to interview, as some of you might know, I used to interview healers. I had a show called Quantum Healing Consciousness and Soul for several years. And I interviewed a lot of energy healers, authors, people who worked with innovative wellness. And pretty much every one of them, this was the first time that I was introduced to this idea, told me that the emotions, when there's a trapped emotion or a trauma, it actually will cause eventually a physical symptom, certainly also emotional symptoms. All of these traumas come from the Eitz Hadas, from the internalization of the snake. So the phoenix did not partake of that eating, did not partake, did not internalize the Eitz Hadas. And that is why the phoenix is the symbol, and the phoenix energy is the potential that allows us to be eternal. Death is superimposed on our reality now, where the world is in a state of panic and terror. And what are people terrified of? They're terrified. Well, now they're also terrified of totalitarianism, but primarily death. If we weren't terrified of death, none of this would be happening. That terror of death, death was the ultimate result of the eating from the Eitz Hadas. Again, the phoenix energy is not part of that. It is the one creature, the one pathway that does not involve death. And how do we get to that place? By burning the traumas. I want to just take a little detour. And before I go on more into the discussion here, I just want to tell you a little bit about my intention for this new show and what I'd like from you. So, as opposed to just a random live stream, you probably know, unless you're brand new, sometimes I've come on air for several days in a row, once even for 30 days in a row. Sometimes I don't show up for weeks at a time. I think it's really important for us to have a time and place where we can meet, where we can think about what it is that's important to us. I invite you to send me your requests, your suggestions, your questions. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover everything in any one session, but I take them very seriously. I already went and looked. Best email to send those to is thegateofunity@gmail.com. You can send them to my regular email as well. It's just a little harder for me to get to right now. because it's remote. My computer's in Israel and I happen to be in Florida at the moment. But this is interactive with you. Before I start a new program, I always think about who it is that I'm going to be connecting to, who's going to be in the program. And I find it very challenging to come up with a set curriculum because two reasons. Number one, we're co-creating it together. Whoever is part of something is part of a collective field. And the energy that gets brought in and the things that get manifested through that energy, through that co-creation depends upon who's there. Also, events are moving so quickly in the world that who knows what the discussion is going to be by next week. So I'm not going to go too much into that right now, but maybe you already know what I mean, and it's going to unfold. There's a vast unfolding that's happening, and we will all be impacted by it more and more. And the choice is going to be, there are going to be a few choices, but one of the main choices, maybe the first choice, is going to be, are you going to stay asleep or are you going to wake up? So staying asleep is what we do to kind of lull those traumas, those traumatic emotions that get trapped in our system as blockages and turn into physical symptoms. That's we go into denial. We hide. That's what Adam and Eve did after eating from the tree of knowledge. What do you mean? God asked, why did you eat from the tree? I told you not to. And Adam said, it wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. First of all, they were hiding. It wasn't my fault. It was the woman that you gave me. And Eve said, it wasn't me, it was the snake. And that's kind of how we live. Why? Because we're so terrified to face what's inside. We're so traumatized. We're so wired to feel that there's something at our core that is just fatally flawed about us, just so wrong about us that we don't want to look. And if we look, we want to outproject it. And the bottom of it all, meaning blame someone else, the bottom of it all is a terror of death. Now, I've gotten some feedback from a few people. A lot of people are relating to the idea of fire and the idea of burning something down, burning down the old. But some people have said, isn't there a softer way? Isn't there, a more illuminated way? And I want to tell you, it just happens by divine providence that today is the second day of Hanukkah. It's the third night already in Israel and in Australia, but it's the second day here in America. And we have another 6 days to go. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 is the number of infinity. So as we light the candle, each candle of Hanukkah, we're adding that light. We're adding that light that comes through fire. What is a candle? And Hasidus talks about this. The mystical Torah talks about this, the difference between the light of the sun and the light of a candle. And in a very small nutshell, the light of a candle requires something to burn. It's a light that comes from fire. Fire, the root of the soul is fire. It's holy fire. It's Gevurah, holy Gevurah. And that's why the flame of a candle flickers, because the source of that flame is this level of holy Gevurah, holy fire, which is, as Kabbalah explains, underneath the orbit of the moon. That's its source. It's not an earthly source, but nevertheless, it requires for fire to burn, it has to be attached to something physical. It has to be held to that physical thing, and that physical thing gets consumed. Guess what happens Kabbalistically when that happens? When you use something that is physical for holiness, when you use your body to do something good, when you take some trauma, some trapped energy that turns into physicality, and you turn it around to release the light, that actually separates the klipa, the shell, from that trapped light, and the light zooms up. I'm describing something directly from the sacred text, and the light, and it catalyzes a release of new light into the entirety of creation. It's called the Or Choser, the returning light. That's what your work is about. So we have these accumulated traumas that came from the Chet Eitz Hadas, from eating from the tree of knowledge, and the world events are specifically designed on multiple levels to trigger our traumas, to trigger that fear, which again is at the core is the fear of death. So there are bad actors, as I've been talking about. There are governments, there are institutions, there are corporations, there are, people, groups of people who are definitely weaponizing fear and is working. But we have to understand, we have to wake up. We have to open our eyes and see what's going on. That's part of redemption also. Underneath all of it, and this is what we must know, if I can give one strongest message in episode 1 of Phoenix Unleashed, we want to unleash that power of the Phoenix to burn the darkness down. and reveal the light like Hanukkah. As the candles go up to 8, 8 is infinity. You can think about the number 8 on its side. It's the symbol for infinity, not by accident. The Torah explains, Hasidus explains that 8 is the number of Mashiach, of the Messianic Redeemer, of this entire era that we're moving into. We're going from finite to infinite. So we have to understand that this is the process that's happening now. We are at the climax, and God is causing directly that creative, divine, infinite consciousness that is the source of everything, that is everything, albeit in many costumes, is directing all of these events using the evil intentions of those people who have them, using the weaponized fear, but not to shut us down, to wake us up, to bring to us the power of the phoenix, to unleash that power to burn down the old, to burn down the exile, to burn down the lies, to burn down the illusions. So that means you've got, if you want to activate this power, if you want to be part of the solution, if you don't want to be a cowering victim, or, that the ostrich with its another bird with its head in the sand until you can't anymore, until the waves start crashing right over you, you have to wake yourself up. Everything that happens is a wake-up call right now. Everything. So instead of not looking, look. See where you've been lied to. See where you're lying to yourself. See where the world is lying to you. See where your history has created false beliefs that are lying to you. I realize there's a lot here in what I'm saying. Oh, by the way, maybe this is a good time to mention, scrolling by underneath the video is a URL, gateofunity.com/soulfire. And that is your invitation to register for free for a 5-day online interactive training where we're going to bring a lot of this down into your life. Start igniting and activating that holy fire. So what is that holy fire inside of you? We talked about the fire of the candle being underneath the orbit of the moon, the holy Gevurah, that divine burning quality, that divine might. What is that in you? So that is the source of your soul. Your soul, every soul at its root, there are levels of the soul, 5 primary levels, many sub-levels of the levels, many manifestations, but at the core, that deepest core level, the soul is actually a piece of God. But when it differentiates into a soul that can animate a specific body, that can experience separateness, that's the source of that soul is also holy fire. Like the candle that shakes, the flame that shakes because it's moving, it's reaching and yearning for its source. That's how the soul is. That's why if you ever see in a synagogue, you see people praying, that they're like this. Maybe it happens to you also. It's an automatic thing. The body starts to shake because the soul is on fire. Ner Havaya Nishmas Adam, the candle of God, is the soul of man, and it shakes to get back to the source. And yet God, there's some opinions that say coerces, collaborates, entices, seduces, and I think all are happening depending on the level, the soul to keep coming back down into the body because it's got to burn the darkness down. That's what it's here for. And each time it does, again, most of the mitzvahs of the Torah, the commandments of the Torah involve physical things, because by using those physical things for a holy source, we turn around, we flip, we invert the core hedonistic nature of human beings. And the body, which also yearns toward its source, like, let me sleep, let me roll in the mud, let me stuff my face, let me, dig really into those physical pleasures. There's nothing wrong with physical pleasures in the right proportion, in healthy ways. But the body is yearning toward more physicality, more food, more money, more honor, more love, more power, more. Okay, we see that happening a lot around us, and the soul is shaking, yearning toward its source. And God puts these two things together in order to burn the darkness down. Now, I've been playing with for years now. I've been fascinated actually by 3 metaphors for this experience of moving from exile to redemption. I guess I have to take a step back and say first that the very nature of your existence, the very nature of reality, is kind of an inversion of what's real. What's actually real? God, divine consciousness. Ein od milbado, all there is. What has to happen for this world and each of us to appear, much less to actually be players in this game, to take up physical space, to make an impact? There has to be this inversion where the truth is absolutely hidden. And what comes out is just one tiny little form of concealing that truth, that divine essence, that divine fire, and then covered up by all kinds of concealments, the personality, the body, the weight of the world, the collective traumas. By the way, your traumas are not only the ones that you experienced in this life, they're the ones you experienced in previous lives. They're not only the ones you've experienced yourself, they're the ones that were experienced by your ancestors and passed down in your DNA. Good news. Not only those, but we are now so sensitive as the physical and spiritual worlds are merging together that we're feeling more and more other people's stuff. We might not always realize it's other people's stuff. It can be very useful to ask yourself, is this mine? And to kind of feel in, if you're not a muscle test, you can do that. Is this mine or is it coming from somewhere else? They've actually done studies. The HeartMath Institute has done studies. There's sensors placed in various places around the world that register the Earth's magnetic field. And when there's a collective, sorry about that, when there's a collective emotion that's felt by a lot of people at once, an old example is Princess Diana when she was killed. That was an event. 9/11 was another event. I read about this quite a while ago, so I don't know what's recent, but there was a measurable spike in the Earth's magnetic field. And the Earth's magnetic field influences us. You know how you wake up and there's like a cloudy sky and you feel pressure or whatever it might be? We're responding to that collective field and we're co-creating that collective field. And our emotions are doing that to a very, very large degree. Anyway, so I wanted to, I don't even know how I got there. I wanted to talk about the metaphors that I've been playing with for a long time of this process of moving. And now I get it. Now I remember. You exist because of an inversion of reality that hides the core truth and just reveals a tiny kind of very limited and distorted drop of it, which is a human being or a gnat or a brick or a planet. And the purpose of that, why your soul keeps coming back into your body, is to step by step from the inside out. And those are the two operative phrases: step by step, from the inside out, burn down some level, some aspect of concealment. Every time you make a choice that is positive, that is holy, that is good, you're burning down some aspect of the innate self-centeredness that comes with this whole inversion of truth. And step by step, every time you do a mitzvah, you're doing the same. Every time at this point in history where it's time to dissolve and burn away the consequences of the Eitz Hadas, of the eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and illuminate its inner essence, which is Eitz HaChaim, which is the tree of life, eternal life, like the phoenix. Every time you burn down some trauma, some limitation, take a trigger and use it for transformation. Take a piece of darkness, burn it up, and you create a vessel for an inner light. That's what Hanukkah is all about. The inner light that comes from the darkness combined with fire. How do you take darkness and turn it to light? You got to burn it. Whether that burning is physical or spiritual or anything else, you have to burn it. Burn the darkness down. Anyway, every time that happens, you are becoming more real. More of your soul is coming online. More of your fire is coming online. More God is coming online. There's more revelation. There are more vessels, Kalim, as Hasidus describes them, as Kabbalah describes them, more vessels to shine that light until this entire inverted reality becomes channels, like a vast, intricate meta network of channels that shine the truth through the creation, through you, through me, transforming our triggers to transformation, transforming our darkness, the darkness of our limiting beliefs and our traumas, to burning, passionate light, releasing the power of the soul as a co-creator. The soul, again, is made of divine fire. Fire doesn't create, fire burns, right? And the soul by its nature just wants to merge back into the one, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to stay down here, co-create, burn it down until the soul shines from the body and is literally a partner, a beloved, in union with God, with the creator. So instead of just one, infinitely expressed, there's one expressed in infinite ways with passionate love between everything and all. So back to the metaphors. There are three metaphors that I've been very fascinated by that I think describe this process of going from exile, from the concealment to the awakening to the redemption. One of them, and I've talked about this many times before in various platforms, one of them is the idea of the baby, the gestation of a baby, human baby or any other baby in the womb. The baby is protected, limited, growing through stages of gestation that each of which is absolutely necessary. If you cut that process short, there's no free will involved. If you cut that process short, there's no life. It has to go on for as long as it has to go on until there is a complete, whole, healthy structure, until the baby basically is ready to be born. At that point, what happens? Quantum shift, cataclysmic pressure in the uterus, pushing the baby through a very narrow space, through the pressure. Both mother and baby feel it until, and it's more and more painful as it goes along, more and more intense until the ultimate moment of that last contraction, the last push, and all of a sudden, it's all over. Joy, happiness, new life, giant free world, and a new stage of growth. So that's one metaphor. And I think we finished that stage. Then there's the chicken hatching from the egg, where again, the chicken is growing. It's like gestating in that egg and it has to reach a certain form, but there's no mother involved at that point. This is just about the chicken. And what happens is, and would be about your personal consciousness, where your consciousness is actually involved. So that has to evolve. So when the chicken feels constriction, when you feel constricted by your ways of being, when you feel frustrated, when you feel lost, when you're in pain, when you're suffering, when you're confused, when you're overwhelmed, that's like the chicken in the egg that's too tight. What does the chick feel? It's like, it can't move. It can't move. And it starts to just push against the shell and the shell starts to crack. And then that's pretty freaky, right? If your world is cracking, our world is cracking, you guys, it is. But it's just a shell. There's a name for it. In Torah and Chassidus and Kabbalah, it's klipa. Literally means shell. The impure shells that are hiding the truth, that keep us contained in these spaces of the womb, of the egg, the cocoon, which I'm going to get to next. As we evolve to the place where we can come into eternal life, till we can burn it down. Okay, anyway, that's the shell. And then the third metaphor, the one I've been loving most until now, and I have a new favorite, that is the caterpillar to the butterfly. The caterpillar is walking on the earth and it's looking down and it's eating leaves and it's getting stepped on. And then at some point, that's pretty much its limit. That's its gig. And then it gets wrapped up into a cocoon and it melts down into gel. Oh, everybody knows this by now. And it has to go through a process there, and then it has to break its way out of the cocoon. Are you noticing any similarities in these metaphors? These are divine metaphors. Everything in the universe is a living metaphor. You're a metaphor. Seriously. Anyway, the caterpillar, the butterfly pushes its way out, and then its wings have to dry off. So even when it's free, it's not ready to fly, right? You're free now, to a very large degree, because we're between metaphor 3 and 4, in my opinion. I didn't get to 4 yet, but you know what it is. Anyway, the wings have to dry out. In the sun, there has to be a new consciousness. There has to be the light, and this is the other type of light that comes from the candle is one type of light that needs a substance to burn, creates a light from the inside out through that burning and catalyzes a new flow of divine light into the entirety of creation, the light that comes from burning. But then the other light is the light of the sun, which is called the Or Yashar. And that is the straight light that shines upon everything, doesn't matter what you do. So more of that comes into the system as we burn away the trauma, the physicality, the limiting beliefs. That's like the caterpillar wings drying off in the sun. So that's the consciousness piece. And that's what's meant to wake up now. All of these lies, all of these global traumas, all of these imposed fears, they're designed to cause us to question what the hell is going on? Where am I? What is going on around here? How many lies have I been told? How many lies am I telling myself? What are the beliefs that aren't necessarily really true? What's holding me back? So you can look at this on a global level, and you can look at it on a personal level, and I really do think they must go together. So as we are looking at the lies, as our consciousness is growing, that's not the only way to grow the consciousness. The Torah, especially Hasidus and Kabbalah, the mystical Torah, is a primary way. And there are others, but that to me is essential. It's inescapable. If you want to acquire divine consciousness, it's right here in the Torah. It's right here. And it's the light that shines from above and permeates as you work your brain around it, as you learn it and work your brain around it, digest it. It permeates and penetrates the brain until there's a paradigm shift that never goes back. And you start to see deeper and deeper dimensions of reality, and your soul powers come online. But anyway, that's one way. That's the straight light. Then there's the burning, which is the transformation of the things that are in the way of your receiving that light, or in the way of your seeing what's really going on. Those things about you need to be burned down. And that's where we come to the phoenix. So this is my fourth metaphor. And I think that that's really, I think we're somewhere between, yeah, I guess everybody's in their own place, but globally, I think we're somewhere, we're definitely past the birth. The shell is definitely cracking. We are, many of us, depending on where we are in the consciousness train, we are able to be receiving the sun as it's drying our wings. We're able to recognize, wait, I'm not what I thought I was. I don't just have to look down, I can look up. I don't have to go into fear, I can go into expansion, not necessarily to contract, but still the light of consciousness must, the Or Yashar must shine upon those wings, drying out the wings until the butterfly can fly. But guess what? The butterfly's not eternal. It's gorgeous, but it's ephemeral. It doesn't last very long at all. It's a short lifespan, right? It's very beautiful and very fairy-like and very mystical and, joyful, but it's insubstantial. The phoenix is the only creature that didn't eat from the Eitz Hadas, from the tree of knowledge. And the phoenix, well, there's another thing that it says about the phoenix. It's extremely humble. It has this quality that Torah calls bittul, which is also a quality that the Redeemer, the first Redeemer, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses had. He was considered the humblest man in that ever lived. He spoke to God face to face, and he commanded the people. So what does it mean, humble? It means he was totally open to his source. He didn't get in the way at all. The Torah says, Shechina medaberes mitoch grono shel Moshe, that the Shechina, the imminent divine presence, spoke through the throat of Moses. And that's what bittul really is. Are you a channel for the divine? So the phoenix, there's a story that's told I believe in the Gemara, that's in the name of Shem, who's Shem, Shem, one of the three sons of Noah, the original Shemite. Anyway, he was the one who was the progenitor of Avram Avinu, Abraham, and all of the patriarchs, and so forth. He was one of the children of Noah, the Holy One, the one that was, going on the straight path. And it's recorded that he talked about the phoenix on the ark, and that the phoenix wasn't feeling so well, and it didn't want to ask for anything. Hashem said that his father Noah asked the phoenix, why aren't you asking for anything? Why didn't you tell me you need anything? And the phoenix said, I see you're really busy. I didn't want to bother you. It's a kind of a funny story, but this is the idea of making yourself very small to make yourself very large. And that's, again, the quality of the phoenix. When we operate on the ego, when we're in the defensiveness that started in the Garden of Eden after the fall, hiding, from shame, hiding from guilt, hiding from fear, hiding from anger, hiding from grief. And all of those emotions and more were generated there. So we make ourselves small, but not in a good way. We make ourselves small by contracting inside of our klipa, inside of our external shell. And to protect that, we act out. We gather as much as we can of power or praise or food or money or, things, or even thoughts, beliefs about what is real in life. Who am I? Who are you? In arguments, we need to win because otherwise we feel like nothing. Everything in our lives is an attempt to cover up that feeling of being nothing, a nothing. So that is a false bittul. It's a false humility. It's the humility of the exaggerated ego. What we need is that needs to burn down, burn away. We need the humility of the phoenix, of the whole. What is that humility? It is pure consciousness. It is the ability to be small, to see the bigger picture, to be a player in that bigger picture, to burn down the ego so that there can be a continuous renewal. So here's the thing, you guys, and this is a work in progress. I can't say this for sure. A lot of what I believe and operate on and explore and teach and try out in my life is based on my hypotheses and theories based on Hasidus and what's happening in the times. But what I know, what I do know. So knowing that energy and matter are the same, knowing, the Rebbe said, that it's that the apparent separation between the physical and the spiritual realms represents a very immature state of human consciousness. And as we move forward into Geula, that separation is going to get less and less. Heaven and earth, physical and spiritual, merge, meaning that your thoughts co-create, meaning that you can heal someone else at a distance, meaning that you can attract or repel based on your unconscious, primarily, and also conscious inner beliefs. Knowing that knowing that we can understand now, we can hack the system because we can understand that when there's an energy block, that it will create a physical blockage and eventually can create actual changes in physicality. But when we remove the energy blockage, when we open that, it creates a new flow from the soul. Picture a stream where there's like a debris built up and the water's running, but the debris creates a dam and it holds back the water. That's where each one of us is in a lot of ways right now. And imagine when the dam bursts, the water flows and all the debris just goes right out of the way. That's what's possible now. With the more consciousness that we have, both from the Torah and from this inner work, from understanding what's happening and from working with it on our own selves, on our limiting belief, on that toxic ego, that unenlightened ego, the more we work in the power to activate, to unleash the power of the phoenix and the path of the phoenix, the more we will have literal life force. And I'm talking physically, literal flow of the soul in the body. Guess what? When the soul is completely embodied, and this I'm not making up, it's not a hypothesis, it's straight from the Torah. When the soul is totally embodied, when your soul has free flow everywhere in your body, it's impossible for you to be ill. When there's no blockage, there's no illness. When there's no blockage between heaven and earth, there's no ailing in society, in cultures, between people. Okay, when we can remove these blockages, when we can dig in and burn down what's in the way, when we can take our fear and burn it down to its inner light. Remember, the light that comes out of the darkness is Hanukkah. This is the path and the power of the phoenix. The light is the deepest light is trapped in the darkness, and that's why what I'm referring to when I brought up that the core of all creation, the source of all creation, is like a cosmic inversion of reality, which means that the most powerful light, and this is also a Torah principle, a principle from the blueprint for creation, that the most powerful light is hidden in the darkness because it has to be trapped there, or it's just going to burst through everything, and that's not the plan. The plan is inside out, step by step, burn it down, make new vessels, shine the light till infinity is shining through you, to you, and through you. So that's the path of the phoenix. And for that, we want to be bold. For that, we want to be players. For that, we want to be aware. We want to be conscious. We want to be involved. We want to be connected. Fear needs to turn to trust. Victim needs to turn to co-creator. Trauma needs to turn to the opportunity for transformation. Trauma and triggered. And whoa, are we being triggered now? We so are. And it's not going to get easier yet. It might get, I think it's about to get somewhat different. I think it's already getting different. But, that meltdown, that bursting, that fire, it has to burn down things. And when in a world, in a history where we have been avoiding consciousness, when we've been avoiding self-confrontation, when we've been avoiding parts of ourselves and parts of other people, all this outward projecting and denial, that's going to cause some triggers. And guess what? That's a great thing, because that's how we create the vessels for our infinite light, to reveal our infinite source, a world with no death. That's the phoenix. So I'm going to keep it at that for right now. I want to say again, thank you for being with me in this inaugural Phoenix Unleashed show. I plan to do this broadcast every week, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. That's 10 p.m. Israel. I can't say I know what it is in Australia, but just figure out your time zone. The replays will be up. I think on Facebook. I'm streaming on Facebook. I'm streaming on YouTube, and my intention is to have these put on other platforms as well. I'll let you know when that happens. Please invite your friends. We are in a rising of consciousness. The one last thing I want to say about this conceptually is that that everything that exists in creation has its physical manifestation, but then it has its like ultimate spiritual genetic code. It has information. It has kind of a field of information, like a gravitational field or a magnetic field that it refers to, like a plant. How does a Dieffenbachia plant know to grow this kind of leaf and not that kind of leaf, to grow leaves at all and not feet? So it's referring to, its DNA is connected to something larger called a morphic field. I won't go down that road very much right now, but we have, as collectives, we have morphic fields that are made up and that connect us through our beliefs, who we associate with, the ideas that we use to feed our mind, the things that we do, the things that we've tried as a result of our beliefs and the results that we've gotten. And all of those build a field of information, which is interactive. And each of those morphic fields has different laws of cause and effect. So the more of us who connect to the morphic field of the phoenix, of the emerging divine reality with us as co-creative players, moving from fear to trust, moving from victim to power, real power, divine power. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not kidding. That's what's up. That's why this is all happening, you guys. Nothing is an accident. And Hanukkah brings us that light from the inside out, step by step, until 8 is infinity. It's not going on forever. There's a certain amount of transformation, of illumination, of burning, of Or Choser that has to happen, of vessels that need to be built, of embodiment that needs to take place, of flow that needs to be catalyzed. And once that happens, it's a whole new ballgame. Just like birth, just like the chicken out of the egg, it's a different world. The baby out of the womb, different world. Past the birth canal, the butterfly out of the cocoon, different world. And likewise, the phoenix. When the phoenix, in its extreme burning down of its previous identity, allowing things to move it contracts, the Torah says, to the size of an egg or smaller, burns that down, and then it arises not as a different entity, it lives forever, but a whole fresh new potential, an expansion of being that compared to the previous is infinitely young, infinitely potential rich, and infinitely miraculous. So if this is something you'd like to spread, you can help me co-create it by inviting your friends. Again, 3:00 on Tuesdays. I may do extra broadcasts at certain times, but I'm going to try not to skip this one, so you know where to find me. I welcome your questions, your suggestions. I don't have to only do this by myself. I can invite speakers sometimes, guest speakers, guest hosts, and have conversation on topics of interest and importance and urgency to all of us. So that's something that I'm looking forward to doing. But again, I would love your suggestions, your requests. I want this show to be interactive. I want it to be co-creative. I want it to be an effort between me and you and everybody who is meant. Sometimes I call it, our sparks or our tribe or the people in the branch of, the branch of our tree, our branch of the tree. I want it to be a co-creative effort between all of us. Last but not least, I'll repeat again, you see scrolling on the banner underneath the video, there's a URL where you can sign up for an upcoming live training, gateofunity.com/soulfire. And that's going to start on December 19th. And it's going to be 5 days, 1 class per day. And try to keep it not overwhelming, but very, very, very practical, very spiritual, very transformational. Again, to get transformation, you must show up, you must commit, and you must engage. So given those 3 things, show up, commit, and engage. Once you sign up, you'll be directed to a Facebook community where we're already starting to interact, and you can build that up, and there's a lot more to come. So I hope you'll join me for that. That will be a real opportunity. It's free to be part of a community, part of your tribe, to get hands-on training and intense launching into the next version of you as you burn down the old and then burn it down again. Okay, and I guess I just want to sit here for one more moment and just say, when I get into teaching mode, I kind of get into a flow of information. And in my mind, I'm like, no, don't say that now. It's too complicated. Say this. Don't forget that. And it's like going on. But I just want to speak for a moment from my heart to yours, like for real. It couldn't be more serious than it is right now. It couldn't be more dangerous than it is right now. It couldn't be more exciting in the sense of what is unleashing, the potential that's unleashing and the power that you have to be part of it could not be more exciting and more potential rich than it is right now. I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, but sometimes I think about if you are, the scene, if you saw the movie with Galadriel, Queen of the Elves, and she said the world stands on the edge of a knife. The world stands on the edge of a knife. So it does. And we've got all the backing that we need. But why does the world stand on the edge of a knife? Why did it come to this point? Because, my friends, we've been deep asleep. Deep asleep. I once got an answer from the Rebbe in the Book of Answers for a question I asked, and he said that people are in a state of dormita. Dormita means like a trance. It's like not just sleep, it's a deep, like Sleeping Beauty, deep sleep. And Ashrei Chelkam, happy is the portion of those who can wake them up. And then in the letter on the other side of the page, people are not even like, people are supposed to be medabrim, speakers, and mahalchim, progressively moving and expanding from one level to another as we go from finite to infinite. I'm just explaining what that means. That's one of the Torah definitions for a human being. It's differentiated from plant to rock and animal. We transform things. We transform ourselves and other things. That's why we're here. That's why God gave us free choice in our souls, in our bodies. You have that. No one else has that. Nothing else has that. Not the highest angel. Nothing. Not a disembodied soul basking underneath the throne of glory. So what is that about? So in this other letter, the Rebbe said that the people are not only not mahalchim, they're not only not, moving, expanding, progressing, or medabrim, speaking, like co-creating with speech, thinking. They're like plants, not even like animals. They're like plants. They won't move. So if we won't move, God is going to move us, and he's moving us already. And the last thing I want to say for now is allow yourself to be moved, get educated, get aligned, get proactive, get onto the path of the phoenix. And you'll see all of life will show up differently. And come to the training, and I'll see you next week. Lots of love.